Good morning and welcome back to the Closer's Inner Circle podcast with Denise Griffitts. That's me and Ben Gay the third. And our topic today it's an important one. The topic is every salesperson loses a sale from time to time. But the real question is, what do you do next? Instead of simply moving on, the best sales professionals take time to learn from the experience. Ben and I have talked about this a lot, and we're going to keep on talking about it until people go, oh, that's what they mean. So we're going to discuss how to professionally ask a prospect why they chose another direction and what to listen to beyond the obvious answers and why honest feedback is really one of the best sales training tools you'll ever have. And we're going to talk about conducting your own debrief, documenting what happened, write that down, write it down, document, write that down while it's still fresh. I do this all the time with my podcast. And why today's no can become tomorrow's yes if you handle the relationship the right way. Write that down as well. It's not a transactional thing, it's a relationship. And as Ben often reminds us, a lost sale isn't a failure. It's an opportunity to become a better salesperson and lay the groundwork for future business. And today we are sponsored by Love Being You, the 10-week program created by Mike Wood. If anxiety, negative self-talk, or old patterns are keeping you stuck, Mike's program offers practical tools to help you quiet the mental noise, shift your perspective, and build a healthier relationship with yourself. And he draws from his own decades-long journey with anxiety and depression. So he created this framework to help others move towards greater peace, confidence, and again, self-acceptance. So visit lovebeingyou.com, L-U-V, beingyou.com, and be sure to look for his upcoming book, One Brave Breath, which is now available for pre-order. Good morning, Ben. How are you? And I sound raspy, I know.
Good morning. Good to hear your charming voice again. And welcome, Mike Wood. I haven't read it, but Learn to Love Being You is intriguing. And
Isn't it? It's a great title.
yeah, it is. And with my charming, cheerful personality, people have a tough time believing that I've suffered from depression and anxiety and procrastination, etc., off and on my whole life.
I
So,
was shocked when you told me that. I kept saying, who am I speaking to? This is not the Ben I know. But once we talked about it, I was like, okay. Look, procrastination, I have a degree in that. I mean, but the rest of it, I don't think I get depressed. I get mean and I get angry, but I don't think I get depressed, thank God.
well, with me, I get around it with systems. My daily success system that Dr. Napoleon Hill helped me develop doesn't care what your mood is or whether you're depressed or not. You do what's next on the list and cross it off and move on. So that's helped. And just being a pretty good actor, operating on a script when I walk into a meeting room and start shaking hands. First, the janitor and I go into the meeting room. I usually help unlock the room because I like to be there first. I want to own the room. And when they start coming in, I'm saying welcome to them, even if they're the ones that hired me to be there. So uh, I have a pattern system I use to get over any anxiety or depression or negativity that I feel. Therefore, I was telling somebody one time, if you hear that I committed suicide, which is unlikely, I don't mean to throw a damper on the conversation today, but if you hear I committed suicide, don't sit around for weeks going, I don't know, I was with him, he was fine, and so on. Because people who have anxiety, negativity, suicidal thoughts, depression, call it what you will, are pretty good at hiding it because
They
they don't
are.
want they don't
I had
want
a
to talk
brother.
about it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
lost a brother to suicide many years ago, but none of us were surprised, to be honest.
Well,
Still heartbreaking, but
my brother-in-law committed suicide years ago. Jane has since remarried and gotten on with her life, but he thought he was caught embezzling from the family, aunts, uncles, and so on, the family insurance company. turned out he wasn't. Somebody said something that made him think he'd been caught. So he came home, went in the bathroom, and shot himself. The uncle, when he heard, said, "Why? Everything's going fine." And they said, "Well, he thinks you caught him stealing." He said, "No, but what did he steal?" You know?
Right. Right.
So, but Arnold, uh, Steve, excuse me, Arnold's the most recent husband. Steve went into the bathroom laughing, giggling, and whistling. Everything was just fine. And then, boom. So, in addition to learning how to deal with it yourself, I'm looking forward to reading Mike Wood's material, studying it, because you can be helpful to somebody else if you recognize the patterns and the trigger words and so on, and you can be of great help. I saved a guy's life one time. I didn't know it till years later, and found it hard to believe even then, but he came to a meeting at my home office in Marin County from San Francisco, drove over the Golden Gate Bridge. He'd already written his suicide note. He was going to meet with me because he had an obligation to, and then on the way back home, drive back over the Golden Gate Bridge and jump.
And
And
nobody survives that. That's pretty much a guaranteed you're
yeah,
gone.
but I was stationed under the Golden Gate Bridge in the Coast Guard Reserve and picked up, I think it was about 14 jumpers. None of mine were alive, although a few have made it. Most of those were sort of messed up. But anyway, his intention was to jump on the way back home. And he told a business partner of mine one day, somehow my name came up, and the guy started crying. And my partner, Sam Mayo, told me later, he said, I looked at him because we were new in our relationship. He said, my God, what did Ben do to this guy? Well, it turned out he was crying because he went over, we had our meeting. I told him he was a winner and I was going to back him and work with him in his new business, having no idea what was really on his mind. He drove home, didn't jump, and went on to become quite successful. There's one. Now, here's a bad news one. We have a swimming pool, and we sort of let it go. And for fear of mosquitoes, I called the county and I said, what do you do? And they said, well, we'll bring over some. It turned out to be 5 mosquito egg eating fish. Throw them in your pool. They'll handle the mosquitoes and they'll breed and so on. So I said, fine. Guy came over. We had a nice chat. He threw in the 5 fish, and I didn't think of anything other than new guy, 5 fish. He got in his truck, started driving back towards Auburn, I think is how you get there, a little town near where we live. And there's this huge bridge. It looks like one of those things that only an artist could come up with. It's hard to believe it exists, way up in the air, 2 or 3 arches, and goes from one point to the other. On the way over, he stopped his truck, got out, and jumped. Probably 15 minutes after I was with him, I picked up nothing. So I'm big on, I know how people fake it, and I know how to work with my depression, bouts of depression, which have nothing to do, oddly enough, with your current situation. I've been broke and happy. I've been rich and suicidal. So I look forward to studying the material. Not so much for me. I've pretty much got mine under control, recognize, oh, here's how it's coming. Here's what I'll do to beat it, and so on. So, but in others, I have missed it at least twice, probably more. My sister-in-law committed suicide years ago, went into her bedroom with a lit barbecue, those hibachi things, took her little dog, went in there, put towels under the door, and asphyxiated herself.
And the
Yeah,
dog? And the
and the
dog?
dog. Yeah,
Okay, I
it's
hate that story.
it's sort of a joke in the family. I didn't like the dog, and the dog didn't like me. So, or anybody but her. So my first question when I heard Liz had taken her life was, did the dog go with her? I feel bad about that, but it
Well,
did cross my mind almost
maybe
immediately.
maybe she knew the dog really did need to stay with her because nobody could care for it. Who knows? Who knows what's going on in your mind? I had a sister-in-law who, honestly, I couldn't stomach her. She was a horrible person, really, truly awful person. She's one of the maybe the only person I've ever actually had hate in my heart for. Couldn't stand her. And she committed suicide when my niece was pregnant,
Hmm.
and that ticked me off all over again.
Yeah.
So, you just don't know. With her, again, no big surprise because she was not a well woman mentally or physically, but yeah, I get what you're saying about yesterday. I was totally depressed, which is completely different from being suicidal or, have chronic unhappiness. My we don't know if she was 18 or 19 years old, but I've lost 3 elderly cats this year. One was 21, one was 20, and now Claire, who passed yesterday, and she was a 5-pound tuxedo. I mean, if she weighed 5 pounds after a meal, she was doing well. And she just all of a sudden passed, and she had been in what I call kitty hospice for a while. You and I had talked about that, but I had to take the rest of the day off. Was I depressed? No, I was grieving, and I know the difference.
Yeah. Losing a pet that's close to you is really rough.
And
And
these 3 live with me longer than any human. Seriously,
uh,
including my parents. I have never lived with a human as long as I lived with any of those 3 cats.
well, to those of you listening, Learn to Love Being You by Mike Wood. I have not read it, not familiar with it, what's in it, but I got a good feeling about it. And if you're dealing with it, get a hold of his material. And if you know someone who's dealing with it, get a hold of his material. And
Yeah.
probably, I think, is the most important one is learn the signs because there are people around you that are dealing with things you have no idea. And if you know what to look for, perhaps you could be the one that steps in at just the right moment and saves them. And I've been uh, not proud, but happy to have played that role a few times in my life. But more important, sad that the signs must have been there and I missed them. And they
Well,
went on.
you've talked about you and Og Mandino.
Mhm.
Same thing. I mean, tell that story very quickly if you don't mind.
Refresh my memory.
That he was going to kill himself, and when he put the gun in his mouth and he told you the story,
Oh,
and
yeah, that's all
that
right.
stopped
Yeah,
you from doing the same thing.
yeah. Uh, Og Mandino is who we're talking about. And Og was died a great philosopher and all. Prior to that, he was a vomit on yourself, wake up on a park bench drunk. And not all the time he could rise up and look like he knew what he was doing, but he went through a horrible time. And he was telling me that one day he decided to commit suicide and needed a gun. So he went over to the pawn shop, and the gun he needed, the only gun they had that he could even come close to affording, was a $39 pistol. And he said, Ben, the reason I didn't die that day is I didn't have $39. So the moment passed and he went on with his life. But then, because it's a chronic thing, not necessarily curable by one session with a psychologist, he had another bout of depression and wanted to kill himself. Went to another pawn shop, I guess, or maybe the same one. And this time he had the money to buy a gun to do it. And so he bought the gun, got some bullets, went. I got the feeling it was to his home. It might have been on the park bench, but he was ready to make the trip. And he said, Ben, I put the gun in my mouth. And he was talking about gun oil, gun residue from the gun having been fired, I guess, the taste of the cold steel, and whatever else goes with a gun. He says, I put the barrel in my mouth and I tasted defeat. He said, I didn't know defeat had a taste, but it did, and it was in my mouth. And in that moment, I decided I would not be defeated. So I put the gun down, got on with my life, and became the Og Mandino everybody knows and loves today. And I alluded earlier to the fact that I've been terribly depressed while wealthy and everything was going well. And I've been happier than a clam broke. I'm not saying either one caused the other. I'm just saying it's not indicative of what's really going. Don't be fooled by the Cadillac. A lot of people in Cadillacs have shot themselves. So anyway, few years go by. I told that story several times because I just found it fascinating. And I was in a bit of a low point in my life, depression, and I decided killing myself was probably the best thing to do. Went up to my office in this big home overlooking San Francisco Bay, got out the gun I had bought for protection, a 357 Magnum that was kept loaded and hidden from my son, and walked over to the sliding glass door out over the deck. I didn't want to leave a mess in my office for my wife to have to clean up. Put the gun in my mouth, and in a flash, it all came back to me.
Yeah,
I
you tasted defeat, right?
tasted defeat when I put that gun in my mouth. Og's story came back. I knew exactly what Og meant. I knew that he put the gun down and went on with his life. So I put the gun down and went back to being Ben Gay, superstar. And that has never been a problem since that day. I've had depression, but putting a gun in my mouth isn't one of the options that's ever crossed my mind again, because I know exactly what defeat tastes like. And as Og did, I'm not going to put myself or my family through that again.
Mm-hmm.
So I repeat, get Mike Wood's material. Mike, when he listens to this, is going to be astounded how enthusiastic I am. I've never met him. I've never read any of his stuff, but I know the material well, and I know properly absorbed, it can be a life changer for some people on this call now, and for people you know, if you know what to look for. I'll get off my preaching platform, but you really struck home with me today with that.
Well, yeah, I'm glad we're having this conversation because I've looked at his material. His book will be landing on my desk pretty soon, and he's going to be on my podcast, Your Partner in Success Radio, in about another month or so. So I truly, I've lived with suicides. I've lived with people who threatened. I've lived with people who did it. It's not something that doesn't impact everybody around them. I mean, we all know somebody that has done or thought about it or threatened it. We don't know how to help them. We don't. So hopefully your story and Og Mandino's story and what Mike Wood has to share can help. So anyway, you're right. Let's move on. But thank you, Mike. I'm so glad you're a sponsor. So I wanted to very quickly, and I'll ask you this at the end of it because you have something you want to talk about next week and probably the week after, which kind of goes into what we were just accidentally talking about. But let's get into our real topic. And I have to tell y'all, Zoom has been glitching out. I've got a huge storm going on here. I'm in South Louisiana. It's hurricane season. And it pops up every once in a while and just rains like crazy, which it's doing right now. But what we were going to talk about very quickly was, how do you professionally ask a prospect why they chose somebody else? I mean, you've written about this, but I think it's something that bears repeating because so many of us just go, well, that didn't work out well, and they move on. And they're trying to stack, new prospects instead of going to the other prospect, the older prospects, and saying, can you tell me what I did wrong? Where did this go wrong? Is there something we can do? So let's talk about that. And then I'll ask you at the end of the show what you want to talk about next week, which I think is a hugely important topic.
Super. The to today's subject, when you hear no, what do you do next? If assuming you've tried everything to turn it around and get the questions answered and so on, uh, this is it's a tough one till you get used to doing it. And if it's done poorly, it sounds phony, like you're doubling around and you're going to try and close them again. But
Mhm.
but I make friends with people first, 'cause people buy from people they know, like, trust, and with whom they feel safe. So I spend a lot of time trying to become that person to them, whether it's over 30 years, 20 years, or 10 minutes, sometimes less. You can when you get good at it, you can strike that blend rather quickly. And, so since I'm now talking to a friend who didn't buy, but nevertheless a friend, I go 100% conversational. In other words, I'm not trying to outwit them, not trying to outsmart them, not trying to double back. I'm trying to learn. So let's say our prospect is named Bob, and he's just said, "No, you gave it your best." And, I've related numerous times over the years. I figure I've given about 100,000 face-to-face sales presentations, not counting an arena with 15, 20,000 people in it, one-on-one. And therefore, about 100,000 times I ask for the order. And I have an unbelievable closing rate of about 86%. It's been within a percent of that ever since I started tracking it years ago. Uh, and people go, "Oh, well, that's wonderful." Well, it's wonderful, except for the fact that that means I've heard no about 14,000 times. And in the beginning, those hurt. In the beginning, I was resentful. Then I realized it might be me, could be their situation, lack of money, lack of need, lack of lots of things. But let's do half of them. 7,000 of those were I screwed up somehow, some way during the presentation. I didn't hear something, or I heard it and reacted improperly to it, or whatever. So 14,000 no's, I'll take half of them without any excuse, my fault. That gives me 7,000 opportunities to learn. So I say, "Bob," something like this would pop in my mind. I don't have it 100% scripted, but here's basically it. "Bob, we're friends, so I want to ask you something, and I want to tell you this is not a double back tricky close. I will not take your order today, even if you insist. I want to learn at this moment. Please tell me why you said no." It can be personal, it can be me, it can be the product, the service, the price, some situation you have going on. Whatever it is, tell me what it is so I can learn with all of my friends and prospects, and so I can do a better job for you next time. How come you said no instead of yes? And then I shut up. And they will most time might take a little nudging here or there, but most times they will give you a sales lesson that you should never forget, because they will if you've created an atmosphere, I call it straight, I'll be straight with you, you be straight with me. If you've created that atmosphere with them and with all of your prospects and customers, if you've created that feeling, they'll open up for you, and you got the right to ask more. Among the things I would say up front, is it okay if I ask you a few questions? And you be straight with me, and I'll be straight with you. Fair enough? When they say yes, the gates are open. You can talk about anything. They just gave you permission to talk about anything. And it might come down to something that you can't control 100%. But even as I said that, this dawned on me, you can control this because you can laugh about it in the future. There are a couple of people in my life I would not do business with, not at all, ever, because they both remind me of Gigi's former husband who beat her and stalked her and made her life miserable for 14 years. And I didn't know about it. And these two people appeared in my life, and they both remind me so much of him. I have a visceral reaction when I see them. I saw one of them at the post office talking, oddly enough, to Gigi as I was coming out of the inner office back into the lobby. And my instinct, until I realized it wasn't him, was to rush across the lobby and smash him in the face. But in another life, not her husband, this guy is a salesman, probably a pretty good one. I've forgotten what he sells now, but I I won't do business with him. So if this guy said to me, Ben, you said no, can I tell you why? I'd say, yeah, you look just like Rafael Villalobos, and I won't do business with anybody that reminds me so much of him. I have to think about other things to avoid hitting you. And he probably would say, well, that's sort of ridiculous. I'm a different person. Yeah, ridiculous, I admit, but it will prevent us from doing business forever. And the good news is that frees up the rest of the afternoon for you to call on somebody who doesn't instinctively on sight hate you. Now he hasn't done it back to me, but we have laughed about it. He'll introduce himself by name and saying, in case you've forgotten, I'm the one you hate for no reason. And we both laugh. We
Well, he
laugh.
didn't take it badly and try to run over you with a pickup truck, so there's that.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe he learned from it. Maybe he draws a mustache on his face before he calls on his next client. I don't know. But that's one of those things he can't control. I'm telling you the story and I'm mildly embarrassed. That makes me seem like a very shallow person. However, I can't stand the sight of the guy. He doesn't have and the other one that looks almost the same. And he doesn't have a remote chance of selling me anything. If that's the case, if that's Bob who feels that way about me, I want to know it. I've got a life to live. I want to get on with calling on people who don't feel that way about me. So that's fine. Chalk it up and move on. As Tommy Hopkins used to say, some will, some won't. Next.
Right.
And that falls under the category of next if he's smart about it. But at the very least, if you've set it up properly, they will tell you how you messed up, where you messed up, and how not to do it. In this guy's case, it would require plastic surgery. But in most cases, get something readily fixable. Uh, they didn't like the way you treated them, that you were too cocksure about yourself. I've heard that a couple of times. Uh,
No, not you.
yeah, can you imagine that?
No, I can't.
Jackasses.
We're both being so sincere. But, I have to tell you, everybody knows me, knows that snark is my second language. It's yours as well. So it's one of the reasons we get along so well.
But it's a wonderful way. Ask the question. There's a book out now written by one of my friends, and I'm ashamed to say I can't remember which one. It's called Ask, and it's a wonderful book. I've skimmed it. I haven't read it all. But the point being, if you don't ask, you don't get.
That's true. You have to ask, and you need to be willing and able to be uncomfortable, embarrassed, or, actually say out loud, oh, crap. You
That's
need to
right.
be prepared for that. You can't walk away and go, oh, they're going to hurt my feelings. Your feelings will be hurt for about 5 minutes, but the knowledge that you gain is completely a different thing.
Can stay with you forever.
Right.
And as he says in the book, if you don't ask, you don't get. But then he says, if you ask and get no, you're where you were. You're going to get no anyway by not asking, by just leaving it up in the air. So ask for what you want, and if it needs to be layered with a little softening front or back, do that. But ask and learn. Either get a sale or learn from the experience. And if you do it well, you'll get sales down the road. Many of the 14,000 people that said no to me became customers later, and a lot of them are customers today because I didn't let it get me down. I didn't let it affect our business or personal relationship. I wanted information, and I got it. And I learned from it, hopefully, and I applied it, hopefully, and got on with my life. And on the negative side, and I've sort of alluded to this already a couple of times, the worse it happens is you know where to spend your time in the future.
Mm.
If I said to somebody, uh, tell me why I wouldn't sell you today. This is a learning experience for me. Tell me why. And he said to me, sort of what I said to this guy, uh, I don't like you. I don't like your kind. I don't like the way you carry yourself. I don't like your air of superiority, whatever. Then that's fine. A, I can learn from that. And B, I won't spend the rest of my day chasing him around. And I'll be aware when I'm dealing with the next person not to appear uh, haughty or, uh, above
You
him or
know it
whatever.
all. Right, right.
Yeah, I like to think I don't do that anyway, but there's the possibility that's the way somebody feels about you, and there's a reason for it. Find out the reason and correct it. People say, I'm not going to take advice from friends, neighbors, and relatives. Well, let me give you a point of logic there. Everyone, so you won't take it from your friends, neighbors, and relatives. So you run over and talk to somebody else. Well, guess what? He's a friend, neighbor, and relative of somebody else. The fact you don't know him doesn't make him or her pure, doesn't make him or her wise. It means nothing more than you don't know him. People say, everybody says I'm a jackass, so I don't listen to them. Well, hold it. Maybe you should listen to them. If numerous people say you're a jackass. Years ago, a guy named Fred Pape, he's gone now. He was the president of Holiday Magic Cosmetics before I was. He also came in the office one day with a gun and tried to kill me because he figured out that I was brought in to replace him, that I was just getting my footing and then he'd be gone. But before all that came up one day, he was one of those characters. He reminds me of Frank Sinatra. I know several people who knew Sinatra, and to a person, they either loved him with a capital L, or they hated him or feared him with a capital H or F, because he could be the nicest, most charming person on earth, and he could slap his wife at a dinner table in a public restaurant. Uh,
Ouch. My friend
yeah,
Jim Tunney, the dean of NFL referees, had a terrific
yeah.
relationship with Frank Sinatra and had nothing but good to say. But I don't know anything about Frank Sinatra other than he was a little guy who could sing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, he's still
Yeah.
a fella.
Well, Fred Pape was one of those Sinatra people. He could be tailor-made suits, jockey size, handsome little devil, and he could just charm you to death. He took me to New York one weekend. And I said, "What are we going to be doing?" He said, "I'll let you know." What he had decided to do was talk me and my wife at the time, the late great Marcia Gay, into having a child, and because we didn't have one, and he thought that was a piece missing in my life. And at the end of the weekend, flew back home and said to Marcia, "I'm ready. Let's have the child." And she said, "What happened?" I said, "A weekend with Fred Pape." To tell you that, but that's what it was. And so anyway, he could be a 100% winner, 100% loser. One day when I knew him, he was on his sixth wife. And
Ow.
it was engaged, I think, getting serious with his seventh, an absolutely gorgeous girl that worked with Xerox. They used to call on us. So anyway, so we're now six, about to be seven deep in serious religious relationships. And Fred's in my office, and he's for some reason decided to let down his hair. And he said, "This one was a no good B word. This one was a this. This one was that. This one did this to me," and so on. And when he got to near the end of the at that time, 6-person list, he said, "What do you think, Ben?" And I said, "Fred, in all of these relationships, there seems to be one common denominator." He said, "What's that?" And I said, "You." which maybe the near shooting came up after that. That might have been a contributing
Well, when
factor to
somebody's been married that many times, there are issues there.
it. Yeah.
Let's
What we
just leave it
have
right
here,
there. But
as
it,
Cool Hand Luke said, what we have here is a failure to communicate.
that's exactly right. And the women, I mean, they should have known better too. How many times have you been married? Listen, you have a nice day now. You hear? Bye-bye. And you leave. You don't have coffee. You don't go to lunch. You get the heck away. But
So
we were gonna
anyway, ask what went wrong. Fred Pape asked me, you know, what's the problem here? He asked me, and I told him, it's you. And he did better with the next wife, woman. The last I heard, they were still together. He's dead now. But uh, apparently it lasted somewhat, and I'm not taking credit for it, but maybe Fred saw the common denominator. It was Fred Pape.
right, right.
If your customer believes you're a haughty, know-it-all person, ask a few of your other customers, see if you hear that somewhere else. If you hear it twice, it's you. And it's fixable, but it's you, and you've got to understand that. So the ask questions after you lost a sale is really important, far more important than most people think, because they think, oh, well, I'm supposed to learn that if I'd shaken his hand when I walked in the door, so I'll work on my handshake. No, it's more than that. If it's a repetitive problem or situation in your sales life, it's you. I used to do a thing. Some of my customers liked it, some didn't. I'd get up in front of their sales organization, whoever it was, and say, years ago, a president of the United States sent Lewis and Clark out to explore the continent. They didn't know how far it went, where it went, what was there, but come back and report uh, what they had discovered and what potentially America could be, the boundaries of it. And they came back a few years later and they described it in great detail. And then I say to the group, so your organization asked the executives organization, asked me a few months ago to find out why sales are down or this is happening or this is happening, name two or three things unique to them. So I went out like Lewis and Clark and nosed around and asked questions and so on. And I've come back with the answer to them and to you. Here's the answer. It's you. That's the bad news. The good news is because it's you, it's in our control. We can fix it. If it were something outside of that, if you couldn't sell in the rain, wasn't possible to sell in the rain, Seattle would not be a good place to start your sales career, and lots
No,
of other
not
places.
even, you know,
And lots of
Pacific
other places.
Northwest. Don't go there if you don't like being outside.
But since that's not the situation and all of the things are within your control, people say, well, what about a recession? I started the call center industry just as Jimmy Carter took office. I I guess I wasn't astute enough to know that you couldn't build a business in the Carter years. I built the world's largest answering order taking service and created a whole new industry and went along blissfully with high interest rates. I didn't care if they were high or low. I didn't need to borrow any money. We generated our own money and we plunged along. So ignorance can sometimes be bliss. I'm not advocating ignorance, but I am saying that most of what goes on around you has little to do with you. If I sat, I'm a news junkie. If I sat and watched the news all day long and believed this affects me, I would have crumbled up in a ball a long time ago. The world's going to hell. Everybody hates Trump. If they don't hate Trump, they hate the other side. Uh, in spite of the stock market being at all-time highs, nobody has any money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I decided years ago I wasn't going to participate in recessions. They just don't have anything to do with me. I control about a 50-foot circle where I'm standing at any given time. And outside of that, my influence begins to wane, and that's fine with me. I can do just fine with little or no influence as long as I have influence over the people I'm talking to and communicating with and doing business with. And that sort of attitude is contagious in that the people I deal with don't talk about recessions and depressions and stock markets, good or bad. We're just running our business.
Yeah,
And
exactly. I do the same thing. I mean, and COVID, everybody was panicking over COVID. It didn't bother me at all. Partly because I am an introvert and I rarely go out in public and interact with other people because frankly, they wear me out. I like people just fine for a while, for about 59 and 3/4 minutes. But my battery, I've timed it, my battery drains very, very quickly, and I have to get back home and just sit and breathe.
mhm.
It's just how I operate. It's how my brain works. But I'm not shy and I don't have any filters. And I do enjoy getting out, just going to the Walmart and talking with people over there. But when I'm ready to go, I'm out, I'm gone. But people say, well, if you're an introvert, you can't do this, you can't do that. Watch me. Just sit back and watch me.
Hold my beer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't take any of that seriously. If you have problems with your introversion, I can't even say it. You deal with it your own way, but don't tell me what I can and can't do because I will, being the pig-headed little brat that I am, I'll find a way to make you eat dirt. I'm not a very nice person today. That's just all you need to know. But, we all have our issues and our biases. Oh, and I wanted to go back. We're gonna run out of time. We wanted to talk today I wanted to talk today about conducting your own debrief, which means essentially documenting what happened while it's still fresh during that conversation, during the sales conversation, during the what happened, can I get some feedback from you? Write it all down. Seriously, write it all down and keep it because you don't know how many times you're going to have to go back to that conversation.
Yep. As I'm always saying, if you've been in selling over 30 days, you've heard every objection you're ever going to hear about that product or service. And people say, I don't want to be on a script. If you've been in selling over 30 days, you're on a script.
Oh, yeah.
We just don't know if it's a good one or a bad one, if it was tested or just something you've drifted into. But you tend to say the same things every time. So what we need to know is it working? And in addition to asking the prospect, always do self-analysis. When you get out in the car or however you got there, sit down and go, okay, let's look at this from a fourth wall perspective. I'm looking at a play. Here I come, stage left. There's the prospect, stage right. I said this, he said that, I said this, and so on. And frequently in the midst of that review, you go, oh, there it is, boom,
Right, right.
there it
Now
is.
do you try to record these calls or ask if you can Zoom them? Because transcripts are also very helpful.
In the beginning, I did. I would a recording device attached to my phone, especially. I've never, secretly recorded somebody in their office.
No, you can't
Probably
do
when I
that, it's
was afraid.
illegal.
Nowadays, you could easily with a hidden camera or something. When I was coming up, you had to come in with sound equipment and heads and a headset. It wasn't very practical. But I did review, and then I went through a period of time where I didn't know that recording a call was questionable. So I used to record calls routinely, mine, the people working for me, theirs, so I could hear where things went right or wrong, what was a keeper, what wasn't a keeper. And I've developed an instinct for it that is, I'll have to admit, remarkable. If I'm watching a television commercial, for instance, and there's something wrong in the commercial, it's like a bell goes off in my head, ding, 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 and it just leaps out at me where most people might not have noticed it, but they would have been affected by it. They may not have noticed it, but subliminally it affected their behavior from that moment forward. Give you a good one and a bad one. There's two attorneys, they're brothers, and their last name is Lakowski or something, but LAW is the first part of their last names. So they call themselves the Law Brothers.
Well,
And
that makes sense. That's good marketing.
yeah, it is. But they are unfortunately the typical ambulance chasing little pigs. Call us and we'll do this and we'll screw the trucking company out of $8 million and you'll get it
Oh,
all because we're the Law Brothers and blah, 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 blah. That was why for a long time, several years, I've been thinking you really ought to call them and tell them how bad they are. So I will not accept you as a client. I don't take local clients. A promise to Gigi. So you're in no danger of me selling you anything, but your ads suck. You're exactly the type of people I wouldn't want to do business with. Then it was on the other day. I was watching the news and on came the Law Brothers, and it was a toned down version. When we have problems in our family, we get together and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh, that's a little different tone. Wasn't great, but it was a different tone. At the very end, one of the brothers looks in the camera and says, just call us and tell us what happened to you.
oh, you told me about that, and I thought that
Yeah.
was actually pretty smart.
Oh, I'm telling you. And so I called them the other day and left word. I haven't heard back. They probably think I'm trying to sell them something, and I'm not going to pursue them. But that ought to be the tagline. And they ought to clean up their commercials and quit sounding like shysters. But then in addition to that, that should be the tagline. They should get known for it. That at the end of every commercial, no matter its tone, tenor, whatever, one of them turns to the camera and says, just call us and tell us what happened to you. Because that's what the prospect wants to do. And you get known for a tagline. Jesse Waters on Fox News before Sean Hannity. When they introduce him, they cut to him and he says, that's something like, and here's what happened tonight. And it's exciting. He's going to tell us what happened tonight. And then at the end, he ends every show with, uh, I'm Waters, and this is my world. And he waves his hand around. This is his world. So tonight starts everything. I'm Waters, and this is my world. Ends everything, and that frames his whole show. Whoever wrote those lines for him, he ought to give them a major promotion and bonus. And whoever stumbled across, just call us and tell us what happened to you, ought to get a major bonus. It's marvelous. But
It
I've
is.
seen,
I mean, I would
I,
actually call them just
I've seen,
to hear
I've seen,
myself complain.
I've seen new ads from them since then that don't end with that.
Oh,
So they don't know the home run they've hit. And I made one attempt to tell them, and to hell with them. So
yeah.
unless they spontaneously go through their old messages and call me, then I'll give them a breakthrough and thinking it'll double their business. Wanted to chat before we got off. I know we're running out of time about next week's call. A lot of people have asked that we give specific examples of sales infiltration. The last chapter in the closers part 2 starts on page 257, the best thing that's ever been written about selling, a specific application, where it was used, and the results. Well, I spent 11 and a half years, Denise, as you know, in and around prisons, 5 years at California's infamous San Quentin State Prison, where I became like an assistant warden or a top officer and the leading inmate. Although I wasn't an inmate, I went home every night after the 12-hour session. And people have asked me, how'd you do that? It was sales infiltration. And next week, I'll tell you exactly how I did it at San Quentin. And then I had a 7 other prison and jail experiences where I taught the same concept over the years. But my second big opportunity to use sales infiltration was at Lompoc Federal Penitentiary, where I was not only a teacher, I was a guest. I like to say I was a guest of the federal government in a gated community. I, walk, I walked in with nothing, and 5.5 years later, 6 years, 1 month, 1 day, and 2 hours later, walked out as the most successful inmate that's ever been at Lompoc, as to twisting the system and making it work for me, etc. That was as an inmate. And this is years ago, but it's still, I use the experience every day. So sales infiltration as practice at San Quentin, sales infiltration as practice in Lompoc. And I'll give you specific, I said, he said, they did examples.
I know some of it because you and I have talked about it. But I can't wait to hear the whole story. And if we need to take up 2 different episodes with this, we're going to take 2 episodes because it's important.
Super. Well, it's not a look at me, I went to prison or worked in prison type thing. It's specifically how to use sales infiltration. And the reason it came to mind as a way to teach it as a specific example is it's easy to picture. You've all seen prison movies. How do you rise up from the lowest position possible to the highest position possible? How do you get the warden to call you Mr. Gay? How do you get them to ask you permission? As I've told you, this is giving away a little bit of it. I approved at Lompoc, I approved overtime for guards. It wasn't the official signature that went on the document,
Right.
but if the boss man, Jay Ledford was his name, wasn't there, if I initialed it on the bottom corner, wrote BFG3, they could work their overtime knowing it had been approved and that they would be paid. When he came back to the office, if he saw my signature, he just signed it. He didn't even read it. So I had numerous correctional officers say to me as they were getting their overtime approved by me, inmate Gay, this just doesn't seem right.
You've told me that story, and I agree with him. It doesn't seem right.
They're-
But
they're
you showed up
not.
and you did Ben Gay. And Ben Gay is always a person who is going to teach, remind, and teach some more.
Well, I look forward to sharing that information next time. I think people will enjoy it. And I know, bring your notepads and pens, you'll learn from it because I'm going to teach you specific things I said and did that changed my prison experience for one that was sort of enjoyable. If Gigi hadn't been waiting for me, I lived the type of life at Lompoc that I wasn't all that ripped about coming home from. I had my own office. I had a staff of 5 or 6 people. I ran the regional warehouse that in turn, anything that was sold in the western half of the United States had to cross my desk. One thing that crossed my desk was me being turned down from a medical procedure for budgetary reasons. I could have died. I handed it to the warden or gave it to the warden, said, look what they're doing for budgetary reasons. Before I call my lawyer and PR firm, do you think there's something you could do about this? I was on the operating table the next day. And but that wouldn't have happened if I had maneuvered myself into the position that saw everything that came, went, guns, pistols, bullets, food, everything.
Toothbrushes.
And it put me in a position, information is the killer. The most powerful woman in Washington, D.C., and her name didn't come to my mind right then, I think it's Susie something, is the chief of staff of the
Susie
President of the
Wiles.
United States.
Yeah, Susie Wiles.
Yeah, if she doesn't approve it, it doesn't happen. Before it gets to Trump for final approval, she determines what and who he sees. The person who controls the information has an unbelievable amount of control. But we'll talk about that next week. It's been a joy being with you today. You want to wrap this sucker up?
Yeah, we have been talking about grief and suicide at the top of the show because we were talking about our sponsor, Mike Wood. Listen, go back and listen to this. It's important. We talked about a lot of things that we hadn't planned on talking about, but it needed to be said, and I'm glad it did. And what we're going to talk about next week, we're really talking about, and it's from the Closers Part 2, Sales Infiltration. So go get these books, 1 and 2 by Ben Gay III. These are known by and large and wide as the sales Bible. So go to Ronzoni Books on eBay, Ronzone, Ronzoni Books on eBay, just type it in, it's going to pop up. And you can find his books. You can find, the closers books by other authors. Mine will be in there soon. Our friend CK, Cynthia K, is going to be in there pretty soon. And I think our friend Randy Chaffee is already in there. If not, he's going to be in there pretty soon. So it's a growing stable of very necessary sales books. Mine's about marketing and podcasting, just so you know. So anyway, go to Ronzoni Books, grab those books and have them in front of you, particularly part 2, which is the one that we talk about the most, and follow along. Yeah, and you have my permission to mark them, color on them, turn the pages down. I won't do it because my librarian from my childhood would rear up and get me with a ruler, but a lot of people do need to mark their books, so do it. Have it in front of you. These should be part of your entrepreneurial library. So anyway, Ben, I will see you next week. And we made it. The storm did not knock out my internet. Woohoo!
You have a wonderful week.
Say it again.
I said, you have a wonderful week. What
You
little
too.
is left of it.
Yeah, you too. Bye, everybody.
Bye.